over over 70, but he was also the president. So they threw everything that they could at him, and he is fine. That other people are not getting, but other people are too that we don't even know about. But they're not giving the average person, they're not giving the average person action, and that for me is shameful. It's shameful. 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 Because most people don't know you can take 10 and you can take ivermectin and you can take these antibody treatments like these monoclonal treatments and um, you can mitigate this. And you know, but they're not.
About money.
There's no, it's about power because power wants you things money cannot. They can't. I love you. I gotta run. I got my head together. So I love you all. Got to go with the sound. And how are you?
I am well. How are you, Santita?
Girl, you know I'm wound up today, but I'm good.
Yeah, morning, Reverend.
Okay, I gotta let you know. Okay,
God
okay.
bless you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Let them go, so we can go on and get going. I have like 3.5 minutes before I come up. I want to get my mind together. Let them go. Thanks so much. You know, it's hard talking before you talk. You know how to preaching. Someone to start a conversation with you before you have to sing. You're like,
Can we do this afterwards?
afterwards. What I'm trying to do by bringing people up is get the sound right because we had so many problems with sound as we've done the show. So, you know, said, okay, what we'll do is start bringing people on. I can't have a conversation. I'm trying to get my papers together and my thoughts together and do the last minute read. Did I read that? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So it just
And the sound is much better now.
yeah. Well, you know, it's not because we've not been working at it. You know, it's something that that you're doing all the time. You know, you're always having to work at it. You know, because it is what it is. But it's good to hear your voice.
And it is certainly good to hear yours.
Good to
Wish
hear
it
your
was a
voice.
singing voice, but I'll take the talking voice.
Oh, you're going to hear the singing voice very soon. Trust.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, yeah. Going to do that because I'm just having to move a lot of things around and friend's funerals this on Monday. And several people walked up to me. They were like, you sing professionally, don't you? I said, yes, I do. They said, oh, yeah, I could tell. I said,
Yes.
well, thank you. Bless your heart. Even though they had a great soloist at Pastor Floyd Flake's church. You know, his wife is pastoring now. Mm-hmm. Because my
Right.
friend Candace, her father was the record. He died in the middle of the construction of the cathedral, and she had to take over his firm and finish it. She left banking to do that. She was brilliant. And did it at 26.
Wow.
Oh, I remember that like it was yesterday. But I'm trying to hear your voice. You heard April, yes?
No.
Oh, April Branch. You know she passed. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Yeah, April passed. They found her last Saturday.
Oh my.
And so we're going to have her service at Push on Saturday. So if you can, please be there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's
Hmm.
like people are parachuting out of here. That's what I was telling my mom. She said,
Right.
parachuting. I said, parachuting.
Oh, oh, it's skyrocketing.
Oh, do you hear what you just said?
Did you know that a low
Yes.
in your saliva can accelerate your decay rate? Did you know that a lack of certain vitamins can
Okay, see, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said recent studies had shown that those vaccinated individuals who do become infected with COVID have just as much viral load as the unvaccinated.
Dr. Pellet will give you a free home whitening kit
Mm.
with your first routine checkup.
We're still in the middle of a study, everybody. That's why I want you to know that if you get COVID, there are treatments for COVID, and you need to know what they are too. Because of
10 seconds.
because if you get COVID, you because it would be problematic.
Right.
So, you know, you got to wait.
change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Wednesday, July 28th, 2021. It's almost August. Can you believe we're like in the middle of the summer? Well, if you go outside, you certainly will feel it. I'm Santita Jackson, WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Progressive Minnesota. It is scorching here in the Midwest. Now in Chicago, even though it's going to be 85 degrees, we're still going to get thunderstorms. Perhaps it will cool things off, but it is muggy here. It is hot. In Minneapolis, 98 degrees will be your high today. Oh my goodness. And thunderstorms. Yikes. So everybody stay cool and do some wellness checks on people who are struggling with their health. And if you have that, stay in and stay cool, drink a lot of water, check on our elders, do everything that you can to make sure that someone other than yourself is all right. I'm Santita Jackson. I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278, and all of my family over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. That's right. All my folks here, my morning stars. A. King from Memphis, Tennessee. Love it. Andre and Brian and Linda and Jarvis and Lewis and Kaiser and Dawn and Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Lorraine from here. Joyce and Meddy, who was just on with me, helping me to get the sound together. Daryl, birthday guy. Linda and Ashley, of course, and Meddy is a birthday gal too. And Joyce and Brian. Oh my goodness. So many of you. Vicky, I'm going to name some more of you. Mark and Lorraine. As we get on through the show, we're going to talk about the January 6th hearings. What about the new mask requirements from the CDC? What do you think about that? Of course, Dr. Deborah Verhoeven is going to go over that with us very briefly, and we're going to continue to talk about that over the next few days. The president will be making that announcement about masks across the federal government platforms. Or if you're not vaccinated, you're going to need to take regular tests. But I think they're going to have to apply that to those who've gotten the shots as well, because Dr. Walensky from the CDC yesterday said that the studies are finding that people who have gotten the shots, those who haven't gotten the shots have the same viral load. Wow. Yeah, that was in an NBC report. So it's something that we are going to have to pay attention to, everybody. No matter what, you got to get well. Some friends of mine we were on our way back from Paris last week. They're fully shot up, fully vaccinated, if you will. And as they were on the plane, they were stopped because the requirement was, even with the shots, you have to test negative for COVID-19 before they would let you on that plane. Think about that, everybody. Something to think about. All right. Boy, the NASDAQ closed down 180 points yesterday. The S&P 500 closed down 20 points. The Dow closed down 85 points. And even as we are in the midst of the Olympics, guess what? Major League Baseball keeps chugging along. The Twins, well, over Detroit, 5-4. The Cubs, well, the Reds took us on and they were victorious, 7-4 over the Cubs. And the White Sox, 5-3 over the Royals. Thank goodness, everybody. And in the medal count, wow, China has now moved ahead of the United States, 24, and Japan, 20. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Chicago. The United States is number 1, 30. Japan, number 2, 20, and oh my goodness, 30. Is it 24 or 34? Let me put on my glasses, because I mean the Chinese are rolling, 24. But now America's rolling. But now we're having complaints about our basketball team. Greg Popovich, who is the coach, they have had some surprising losses, and they're blaming the coach. Hope they can work that out. I like Greg Popovich, and I'd also like this new group of players that they have. But guess what? Simone Biles. Wow, what is going on, everybody? She's saying mental health is her concern. So she is withdrawn from all around competition. She will be entering individual rounds, but she withdrew from Thursday's all-around competition to focus on her mental well-being. She's getting high praise from Michael Phelps, who struggled with mental health issues. he had to admit, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of pressure. You can imagine. These people are on the global stage. They're on the global stage. And she's become the face not just of American gymnastics. And she panel that they had with Dr. Nasser, who was sexually abusing many of the gymnasts. Well, guess what? She is now considered to be the premier athlete in the world. What does all of that mean? Everybody, please like and share, like and share, like and share. Let's have a discussion about that. What kind of pressure is she under? We're going to talk about January 6th. What did you see when you saw those, the more footage of the riots, and uh, when you heard the stories of those who were protecting the Capitol? It was heartbreaking to hear the trauma and to hear what they endured trying to protect the Capitol and our representatives. And of course, we're going to be talking about that with Malcolm Nance. Can't wait to hear that discussion. And did you hear about Daniel Hale? Well, he's a whistleblower and he was sentenced to 45 months in prison because he exposed American war crimes using drones. Can't wait to talk about that with Chip Gibbons from Rights and Dissent. So, everybody, let's get to a few of these headlines so that we can get to the rest of the show. We've got Reverend Vicki Johnson giving us some good news today. Uh, wow, reversing earlier guideline amid the Delta variants. The CDC is advising vaccinated people to wear masks indoors in public as we're watching surges all across the country. We're going to be talking with Dr. Deborah Holden about that. A hitman sent them. That is what a Capitol police officer says of the January 6th attackers. Officer Harry Dunn of the U.S. Capitol Police, who, along with his brethren from the Capitol Police, gave compelling testimony yesterday, said that a hitman sent the mob that invaded the halls of Congress, and he wants Donald Trump to be dealt with. Everybody, he was the one who was called the N word, and he said, "I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it out loud. It's not going to be the N word. I want you to hear what I heard, and I want you to feel what I felt." God bless him. Human rights and press freedom advocates expressed dismay yesterday when whistleblower Daniel Hale, who pled guilty earlier this year to violating the Espionage Act, was sentenced to 45 months in prison for sharing with a journalist classified information about the U.S. military's drone assassination program. Everybody. Wow. What do you think about that? We're going to hear what all of this means as he was being escorted out of the courtroom. Many people mouthed, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Unless Congress acts immediately, 20 million people will lose unemployment aid in just 41 days. A new analysis sent out Tuesday from the U.S. Census Bureau's Household Pulse Survey says that 20 million people across the United States will lose unemployment benefits if emergency federal programs are allowed to lapse at the beginning of September. Call your congressman in both houses and make sure that that does not happen. Of course, Bishop William Barber and Reverend Jesse Jackson were among dozens arrested while demanding filibuster repeal outside Arizona Senator Sinema's office. Let us get to, oh, the blessed, the anointed, the great psalmist, as well as preacher, pastor, Reverend Vicki Johnson, always giving us some great news. We just love you so much. Pastor Vicki Johnson of the St. Thomas Lutheran Church at 8,000 Jeffrey. That's 80th and Jeffrey here in Chicago. They're holding their services from 11:45 to 12:15. So go on and be with them, because I know Reverend Johnson is going to be everything, including first and foremost safe. We need some good news today. Boy, oh boy, so much has been going on. So much has been going on, Pastor Johnson. How are you today?
Yes, I am great, and I'd like to say good morning to you, Santita, and to your stars and friends. But first, I'd like to congratulate your father, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and your family on receiving the highest honor in France. When I watched and saw them place that medal around his neck, I felt like I was being bestowed with that honor because
You
we
were.
are part of the fabric of your father's life. And it feels so good to be a part of his greatness. So congratulations to you and your family.
Well, thank you, but we're
Is that
all
good?
family,
Yeah.
remember? And,
Oh, yeah.
and remember
Yeah.
when we were at the Capitol Theater,
Oh,
ballroom,
yeah.
it just it lets us know that all the things that we're doing, People are watching
Yeah.
all around the world as we march for freedom, as we register people to vote, as we participate in organizations. People are watching, they're being inspired. So you were there with us, Vicki. You know that, Pastor
Yes,
Johnson.
I was. Yes, I was. And I am truly grateful to have that as a part of my history
Yes.
as well. Is there good news today? Yes, there is. I have a dear friend whose name is Kim, and she is an excellent cook. She makes really good baked beans. When my husband tasted them at a cookout, he suggested that I get the recipe. Not that my baked beans were all bad, but they could be better. As Kim shared the detailed recipe, she admonished me to follow the instructions. How difficult could that be, considering it's only baked beans? As I gathered all of the ingredients, cans of baked beans, onions, green peppers, brown sugar, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, ketchup, mustard, barbecue sauce, bacon, or in my case, imitation bacon bits. There was a particular order that was to be followed, like sauteing the vegetables and the like. But as I began doing all of this, I felt like it was too time consuming, too much to do, so I cut some corners, not thinking that it would really matter. After all, it's only baked beans. As you figured out by now, Vicky's baked beans did not taste like Kim's baked beans. Why? Because I did not do as she told me, to follow the instructions. Many times in life, we do not get the outcomes we expect because we don't follow instructions or directions. Somebody has already worked things out for us to make it easy. All we have to do is follow the instructions. I'm not the only one who has done this, because I know that some of you on Christmas Eve were scrambling to assemble toys while the children slept, only to find that you had extra screws left because you did not follow the instructions. And then you pray on Christmas Day that the toys don't fall apart. There is a way to get the desired outcome in life, and that is to follow the instructions. It takes the wonder out, and it takes the stress out. And Lord knows we need to be stressed less. So for best results, follow instructions. If you can do this, and I believe that you can, then to me, that's good news.
Amen to that. Instruction, everybody. Pastor Vicki Johnson, St. Thomas Lutheran Church at 80th and Jeffrey here in Chicago. You'll get more of that good news if you go into the service, or if you follow them on Facebook. Lutheran Church here in Chicago, sending you much love. Pastor Vicki Johnson. Love you so much. You all
Thank
also
you,
have to hear
and
her sing.
much love to you. Much love to you.
Much love to you. Got to hear her sing too. Dr. Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. Well, I'm so glad you're here with us every day, because I tell you what, we do need you. As infections rise, CDC is urging some vaccinated Americans to wear masks again. People infected with Delta variant might be contagious, according to the CDC. And then Dr. Walensky yesterday said, well, we're finding with our studies that the viral loads, she said recent studies, according to this NBC report, had shown that those vaccinated individuals who do become infected with COVID have just as much viral load in some cases as the unvaccinated, making it possible for them to spread the virus to others. Thus, the masks. And on Thursday, the president is a mask mandate, or certainly a COVID testing mandate for federal employees. Whew, Dr. Deborah Holden, you have the floor. What's going on?
I had to pull my own article up. I did a news story and then an article on this very issue as kids return to school. In my county, for example, kids go back August 4th. Our kids go back really early. They get out early, but they also go back early. And the school, in our school district, is very split. It said, well, we're not going to require anybody in the school to wear a mask. And I spoke out and I said, that's a mistake. Everybody in the school has to wear a mask because many of the kids in school aren't vaccine eligible. And the adults will get the kids infected. So everybody has to wear a mask. The adults have to wear them to protect the kids, and the kids have to wear them basically to protect themselves. And it's so interesting to me that, and I did this last week, that now, 4 or 5 days later, here comes the CDC making the same recommendations. I won't lie, it's disappointing to me. This is the agency that's supposed to be on top of this, out at the forefront, giving us the best information and not just the recommendations. What's the information? See, a lot of these recommendations that they've made have had no why behind them, no rationale, no understanding, no explanation, just these recommendations coming on high from the CDC. Remember there was a period when they would put recommendations up on their website, and before you could read them, they would come down. So I just think this is creating more chaos, more confusion for most people. And the other thing is, if you go with the data, right, if they were to just give people the data and then the recommendation based on the data, like a little bit of understanding of the why, we've all relaxed and everybody, let their guard down. But we have more COVID cases now than we did this time last summer.
Why do you think that is?
Well, our certain practices are way more like than they were this time last year. And unfortunately, not getting more people, a greater percentage of people vaccinated. That was the great hope, for the vaccine. The missed opportunity was to get a lot of people vaccinated very early. It being spread out over so much time, has given opportunity for these variants to really take hold. And so the thing that was supposed to tip the scales for us, it didn't tip the scales because we didn't get the shots in arms the way we thought we would.
But what about,
and I'm convinced that early inequity that we saw only fueled the problem.
well, do you think that this is part of the problem is that, as you said, this is a Swiss cheese approach that we need, that there are different layers of protection, there are different things that we all ought to be doing? Because indeed, the head of Merck pulled Merck out of the vaccine race. He said, because we cannot come up with vaccines, and they're one of the biggest, most esteemed vaccine makers in the world. We can't create a vaccine that is as effective as we want. He said, so they moved into therapeutics. And you were saying last year we started flattening the curve without shots by being physically distant, practicing hand and oral hygiene, wearing the masks. We were beginning to make significant progress. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? You have 3 minutes. You've got the floor. Because I think a lot of people today are now concerned. They're concerned and they're worried and they're tired. Dr. Deb.
Yeah, it's exhausting. It's like your, so-called trusted authority is just all over the place. You have a really good friend, and this friend normally has a really good head on their shoulders. And then they go through something, and they're just all of a sudden, like, all over the place. That's what it feels like from you at the CDC. And they're saying that the way they tried to frame it was, the science has changed, and so our recommendation has changed. I don't entirely agree with that. I don't think the science has changed. We've known about variants. And most of the variants tend to have a more aggressive profile than the original strain. Most of them tended to spread more easily and cause more sickness. And if that wasn't known at the time, it was predictable. I remember people were saying here for weeks, we don't have any variant cases in Flint and Genesee counties. And I told people that is just not true. What it is we haven't detected them yet. But it is physically impossible that 53 to 57% of all COVID cases in the U.S. are Delta variant, and we don't have any in this county. It's physically impossible. And then what we find out is this. They test 10%. It's called sequencing or genotyping, right? If you want to know what strain people are infected with, you have to send samples off, and you have to get the genetic sequence on that sample. That's the only way to know what strain people are being infected with. So they send 10% of our cases to the state. The state then takes a random sample of 10% of those cases, of all of the cases that they get, and they will test those. So if you do the math, what's 10% of 10%? That's 1%. Statistically, they're testing about 1% of our cases. We had weeks in the past several weeks where we had single-digit cases. So it's possible that none of our samples that were sent got sequenced. Or we had 10 cases, but only one of them got sequenced. And the one that randomly got selected wasn't a variant case. So it's and I hate to say this because I don't know how people would know all this stuff other than really figuring out who are their trusted, incredible messengers. I'm on my toes, Santita, trying to figure out how these things work and doing my very best to disseminate valid, fact-check information to people. And that's what people really have to do. They have to identify what their trusted, credible sources are. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a one-stop shop.
Well, you know what?
It's going to be the same either.
We're grateful to have you here every day because the numbers are calculated out of your alma mater, place where you have worked. You're still affiliated with Johns Hopkins. 15. And so we just thank you for all that you are doing every day. We know it's a sacrifice for you to be here. But we thank you because we do trust you, and you have been very honest with us, and everything you've told us has come to pass. Dr. Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Michigan State University, coming up. Malcolm Nance. Let's talk about what happened January 6th. And what about that hearing yesterday? More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Ugh.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, my gosh. But you looked fabulous in Mother Jones. I'm about to post that right now.
I did not even read that article.
Oh, it's a great article. I finished reading it. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. Because, it was really told through your eyes, and, you could see a lot of layers of your experiences. It's like a hometown girl come back good.
Mm-hmm.
But you see how a hole was blown in the heart of Flint. This was a town that had a solid middle class. But when these corporate giants move on to make more money for themselves, they leave a lot of wreckage behind. It's an awful thing that they're doing. So, but I loved your outfit. So, okay. Please do not make me shallow. I'm sorry. Whatever. Okay. Whatever. I thought the outfit was fabulous. So there we go. Oh my gosh. But thank you so much. We need to have an extended session tomorrow. Okay, Dr. Deborah Holden. I've got to talk about this riot on Capitol Hill and the discussion about it. But I'm sending you much love. I'm going to call you later today anyway.
Okay, wonderful. Have a great show.
Thank you so much. Malcolm Nance.
Good morning. I'm very well.
I'm sure you are. I'm about to call you Karnak the Magnificent.
In a way.
I mean, woof. Well, I'm going to give you the floor because I am trying to make heads and tails of what we have seen because golly. I,
Well, let me start by saying this, Santita. As your listeners may know, when I was on a couple of months ago, that I've been writing a book since last August.
mhm.
I
Well, hold on.
swore
We're not up
having.
yet. Hold on.
Oh, you're not up yet?
We're not
Okay.
up yet. No, no, no. I don't want you to waste
Hey, were
that.
you in Paris with Jesse?
Yes, of course. My mother didn't go. Oh, why did you call?
I was at the Westin in Place Vendôme. I
What?
didn't know until the next day when I saw it on France 24.
We were there like 2 or 3 more days.
I was there until the 18th.
Oh, I can't believe this. I cannot believe
Don't
it.
start calling me when you go places.
You know what I am? My beloved intelligence officer. My father would have passed. He would have taken you to the Elysee Palace with us. He would have said, "Oh no, no, no."
Oh my God!
He would have. Are you kidding me?
I know. He's amazing. Well, I'm so happy.
1 minute.
Yeah, but shoot, I wish you. I'm very disappointed. This was a great trip.
I'm gonna start putting my travel schedule out on Twitter when I go on these big trips. I just wanted, you know what? For years, I'd want to go see Bastille Day, and I did.
Oh wow! We saw the Tour de France. That was big fun. Oh man, we were at the and
okay.
and it was they were beautiful to us there. We had a great time. And my mother didn't go because she didn't want that 7.5, 8 hour flight. She said, "God bless you, I can't do it."
Oh, really?
Oh no, she can't do it. Anthony, who got all the shots, he does not feel comfortable traveling yet. He just said, "Yeah, y'all got it. Love you."
Fine. Oh my God, I had such a good time. I needed it too.
Yeah.
Since I'd lost my wife.
Yeah.
Change the world,
Oh,
change the world, change the world.
oh wow.
We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Wednesday, July 28th, 2021. Of course, I've got one of my favorite people in the world here on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Malcolm Nance, brilliant intelligence analyst, one of our just most esteemed veterans, the author of The Plot to Betray America, The Plot to Destroy Democracy. These need to be movies because, The Plot to Hack America, it's like it's a spy novel, but it's real. It's real. And he's just ripped my affairs. You were there 2 weeks ago and you didn't even call. You should. Oh, I'm done.
I had to watch French TV to find out you were there.
Oh man, I can't believe it. We had a great
We were
time.
down the block from each other too.
I can't believe it. Oh wow. Oh wow. But I'm glad that you got over there and had a wonderful time. We were over there, of course, during a time of a lot of activity, the Tour de France, Bastille Day. There was just a lot going on in France at that time, and in Paris in particular. And I thought we had a great time. We would have had an even better time, and because it was even my birthday over there too. We had a great time. The 17th. What? Mhm. We had a ball. Had a great time.
Let's talk about horrible things now.
Okay, let's shift gears. You know what I have to tell you? Watching these Capitol Police officers, absolutely heartbreaking. To hear Officer Dunn say, "You know what? A hitman sent these people here." And, he said, "I wanted to say the N word." He said, and he said it. And I'm so glad he did say it. I said, because it's not the N word. That's not how we hear it. That's not how we hear it. Walk us back. Walk us back. What we hear from these officers that perhaps we haven't heard before?
Santita, when I was on a few months ago, you all might recall, that I actually predicted this insurrection. Actually, I predict further than an insurrection. I predict an insurgency, which is a generational conflict. And I did that on Bill Maher's show, Real Time with Bill Maher, on November 6th, 2020, where I said we are going into insurgency. And the reason that I said that was when I started work on this, my latest book, which I swore I would never write another Trump-Russia book. This one isn't. It's about Trump and his terrorists. And it's called They Want to Kill Americans. And that's the exact premise of what happened after the election. What happened is that Trump, fostering the big lie that he actually won the election by 10 million votes, mobilized 74 million Americans to reject American democracy. And it turned into the insurrection on January 6th. And anyone who was working in the counterterrorism or counter-extremist world saw this coming. They were talking on their channels about taking back the Capitol. You know, Santita, the price of AR-15 ammunition before the election was 21 cents a bullet. After the election, it was $1.25 a bullet, and it's still that high. These people think they are preparing for civil war. I'm serious. And now what we have is we have a new strategy unfolding after the insurrection and after Biden's inauguration, where the Republicans, I call it the DARF strategy, deny that there ever was an insurrection, deny that Trump lost the election. The next is attack. Attack your political opponents. Attack anyone who allies themselves with that. The next phase, if they win in 2022, the House of Representatives, elections that most people don't vote in the midterms, they will exact revenge on the political process. Professor Jason Johnson on MSNBC said it. I will always give him credit. Their strategy is to elect Donald Trump, appoint Donald Trump Speaker of the House of Representatives in January 2023 if the Democrats lose the 6 seats that they're projected to lose. That's how bad it could be. And then they are going to go on an impeachment palooza.
No, stop.
And try to put Trump back into power that way.
You gotta roll this back now. Roll it back. Did you just do something big? Yes, you did. And because you say things that tend to come true, Karnak, magnificent, channeling Johnny Carson here. Talk to me. What do you mean? Because it does seem like these folks have a plan now. You said they plan to put Donald Trump, install him as the Speaker of the House. Explain that.
Yeah, this is, and the thing is, since Jason Johnson said this about 2 months ago, they are saying it loudly and in public now, that their strategy is to go around the Constitution and the elections. And if they win the House of Representatives, right now the Democrats are down 6 seats. We lost an enormous number of seats in 2020. Mm-hmm. For some strange reason, people voted for the top line for president, but didn't vote for Democratic representatives. So we lost, I believe it was 12 or 13 seats, our comfortable margin. Traditionally, in the midterms, the party in power loses control of the House of Representatives. The Republicans are relying on Democrats not coming out and their voter suppression laws suppressing the black vote enough for them to win back the House of Representatives. That means in January 2023, they can vote for anyone. They don't have to be a member of Congress. Anyone can become the Speaker of the House if they win the majority of the vote. And Republicans have said they are going to vote for Donald Trump to become the Speaker of the House, the number 3 person in power in the United States. And at that point, they are going to go on a campaign of impeachment. They may not get Biden and Harris out of office, but I've heard it said by very high-level Republicans, they are just going to destroy their government. Nothing is going to work for the next 4 years, the next 2 years, until Donald Trump runs for president as Speaker of the House and gets installed as President of the United States.
That is unbelievable. But
yeah, but it's believable. They're saying it.
It's doable. It is very doable because you do not have to be a sitting member of Congress, right? In order to be the Speaker of the House. That is an appointed position. You need to win votes from amongst the members of the House of Representatives, and they can pull anyone off the streets and make them Speaker of the House. Whew. Makes every election that we're looking at. Nina Turner is up for election just outside of Cleveland in just a few days. Everybody, I want you to remind you of that race in Ohio. What did we see yesterday? I mean, help me to understand what we were looking at, because I worked on Capitol Hill when I was in college, and getting around Capitol Hill above ground is very difficult. But Malcolm Nance, my dear kind sir, trying to get around that hill, you can never figure it out. You could never. So I said, now, how did these guys know how to get around this place? Because this is the hardest place in the world to navigate. It's just, it's unbelievable. So what did we learn yesterday? What were they talking about yesterday? Because it did seem that what they were discussing was part of a broader issue, which is what you're bringing to fore. That this is a bigger, that you also said that January 6th was but the beginning.
It is. Well, what you saw yesterday was finally the official record on the House of Representatives of what happened on January 6th. They're going to conclude with these hearings and conclude with an official report that will come out about what happened on January 6th. And this is necessary because remember how I said the Republicans adopted in mid-February a deny strategy pushed by Trump, that Republicans will deny that Trump lost the election, and they will deny that the January 6th insurrection was anything other than tourists visiting the building. They are literally trying to recreate reality. What you saw yesterday was the official record finally coming out against that. I was called before two panels, two hearings, the first two hearings after the January 6th insurrection. And I said that this was going to happen. The Republicans have a vested interest in rewriting history. They are literally saying nothing happened on January 6th. So yesterday, those officers telling their horrible stories about what happened to them, the things that were said to them, the abuse, the injury. I mean, Mike Fanone was stunned in the back of his neck with his own stun gun twice. It's interesting. I use his words from interviews he had given before, the first words of my book. And those words are, kill him with his own gun. That's what they were shouting. They were trying to wrest his pistol out of his holster and kill him. These people were 40,000 people came off of that mall. And as many as 10,000 stormed the building. And as many as 1,000 got inside the building. How did they know? We know that we have indications. I won't say we know, and we're going to find out in these hearings that some members of Congress were giving tours of the Capitol building and the Capitol complex at a time no one was allowed to take tours. We also know that they were studying the building. We have copies of the maps that they were distributing on the internet. People were actually calling other members who had penetrated the building and were giving them guidance about where to hunt for Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There is no doubt in my mind, and I said this the very night of that attack, Santita. There were people in that building with the intent to commit murder. In counterterrorism, we call them murder cells, right? That's their job. They come in, they flow in with other people, and if they had found Nancy Pelosi, I want all of you to visualize this. Do you think they would have just stood there and said, we're petitioning you to hear our voice? No. They would have committed acts of violence, if not killed her. Same thing with the most notable people. Maxine Waters, friend of mine. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, any black member of Congress. They would have beat or killed them. They fought a noose to hang Mike Pence. These people, you have to take them at their words, Santita. I've worked around terrorists my whole life. When they start committing terror, when they start saying what they mean it.
How were these police officers able to fend them off? Because they were virtually alone, each one of these persons. And there were so many of them who were not there that day. Please explain that.
Well, there were a lot of reinforcements call up, but all you can say is that I watched it in real time. I was watching, the live streams that I was watching were not from television. I was watching the live streams of the insurrectionists themselves. They had hundreds of live streams going. And I was watching the initial fighting out there on the Western Steps where Mike Fanone, came in. And believe me, the only reason that they didn't set that building on fire, okay, and destroy that structure is because the police held them back so long, to the point that they pretty much exhausted them. And contrary to what most people believe, the shooting of Ashley Babbitt, the former Air Force security police woman who should have known better about crossing red lines, when she was shot, that's essentially broke the assault on the Capitol because they suddenly realized things were getting serious. The restraint showed by the Capitol Hill Police and Metropolitan Police Department is absolutely incredible. In any other circumstances, if it had been black people, believe me, there would have been a massacre. So, for these officers to show that restraint and to finally push them out, just shows the skill that they had. But now, you know what I'm seeing on right-wing talking this morning? Federal cops are now the enemy, and that local cops are the ally.
Weren't there local cops involved in this?
Oh, no, not in a black city like Washington, D.C.
No. I mean, just from all around the country.
Yeah, well, yes. In fact, they've arrested several armed policemen who came into the Capitol. One of the officers said this yesterday, that a cop flashed a badge at him and showed him his gun. These people were armed. There were a lot of armed weapons in that crowd hidden away. I know that I was working with a group called Sedition Exposers, and they showed me firearms that were exposed, and I identified those firearms of people who were coming into the building. And that's what the cops were worried about. They were worried about a massacre. There was a DEA agent, right, who showed his own live stream and took pictures of himself with his firearm in the Capitol and was arrested last year, kicked out of the DEA, arrested this year, kicked out of the DEA, and now is facing trial for attacking the Capitol. These people thought they owned the United States that day and that they were coming to overthrow American democracy and install their dictator. And many of them are cops and military people, as many as 20%.
Where is FOP on a local level in all of this? Because they know who's participating. I'm just asking.
Yeah, dead silence from the police union. Do you hear it? You know how you're always hearing these police union chiefs out there insulting Black Lives Matter, insulting civil rights protesters, insulting anybody else. They're first and foremost on television talking about protecting the dignity of their officers. Dead silence from police unions. Now, this is what I just said a minute ago. They're starting to make this mental split that federal law enforcement officers who support the government, this government, okay? I mean, 6 months ago, they were in love with these guys, except for the FBI. But now, any officer who supports this government, which means the Constitution, is now an enemy. And only local cops who oppose Black Lives Matter, who oppose others, they're the real police allies that the thin blue line flag represents. They were throwing those flags like spears. I literally have video of them throwing thin blue line flags at police officers' heads, beating them with American flags. But you know what? There were more Trump 2020 flags than there were American or thin blue line flags out there altogether. And that should tell you everything you need to know.
We're talking with Malcolm Nance, intelligence expert, the author of so many wonderful books, but he's working on a new one. But you need to get The Plot to Betray America. You need to read his books. You need to hear what he's been saying. Everything that we saw January 6th, he predicted. He foresaw. He said there's something going on in this country. There is a spirit in which people are pulling for civil war, in which some people, Dr. King said, Malcolm Nance, while evil men plot, good men must plan. And folks are planning. And I'm not willing to go so far as to call people evil. I'm not them. I'm not. I just think that many of us have a different type of opinion. You can call it Pollyanna-ish if you will. But that having been said, this all feels very dangerous, Malcolm Nance. It really feels very dangerous. Civil war is something we haven't gotten over. It's been more than 150 years. We're not prepared for that. But a civil war over what? Malcolm Nance? Was my
I'm
is,
sorry. I'm
oh
sorry.
oh no, I just wanted to know the civil war would be fought over what?
You know, it was Thomas Ricks, the defense writer, who about 3 weeks ago put out what I thought was a seminal, defining tweet about what we're going through. And I want all of your listeners to take it to heart. He wrote that there is a class of white American in this country who now believe that if they cannot have their America, Trump's America, then they do not want America. That's where we're going. They have a mindset that their fictionalized Trump vision run by a dictator America is the America that they want, or they're willing to destroy this nation to do it. Now, if that doesn't sound very 1860 to you, because the last time this was brought up was if they couldn't own and live off the welfare of the financial cap slaves and keep people enslaved, then they didn't want America. That's where we're going. We have a country where as many as 30 to 40% of this country would rather tear this country down and engage in civil war to do it. There was a poll about a month ago that said 56% of white Southern men want to secede from the United States. Again, so that's where we are. These people aren't lying, Santita. They are telling us what they believe, and we have to pay attention to them. We don't have to give ground to them, but we have to understand their fever is real. And if that fever burns the country to the ground and kills other Americans, they're fine with that.
Malcolm Nance, everybody, the plot to betray America. And it feels like the plot to betray America, the plot to destroy democracy, the plot to hack America. I mean, you just keep on going with this. You have seen these threats to America for quite some time. What are the rest of us, well, possibly, what are we missing? Do you think we're not taking this seriously enough?
I got to tell you, okay, now, every time you and I talk, I have a little chat with our community, right? African-American community, the African-American listeners who are listening. First off, we cannot defend this country sick. There are so many of us who are not getting vaccinated from the coronavirus vaccine. It breaks my heart to watch television and hear stories of people in Arkansas, in Alabama, right, on television who are black, who are in ICUs. I mean, I'm African American. I have high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. It's genetic for my family. But if I'm vaccinated, fully vaccinated. I ran to get my vaccine. But we have people who are dying unnecessarily based on the fact that they hear conflicting information. I'm here to tell you, go get vaccinated. We can't help this country. We can't help our community. We can't help ourselves dead or incapacitated. And there's an entire class of Trump Republican that does not want you to get vaccinated, just like they won't, because they know that it will weaken us. And they don't care one way or the other. So let's start with that. What else can you do about this? Once again, this November 2022, it's going to be up to the African-American community to once again save America. We have to mobilize everything, like the exact same way that we mobilized when Barack Obama was president and last November. We have to mobilize to save this country. It's just that simple.
What is at stake? When you say save our country, what does that? I mean, I've got 2 minutes and they belong to you.
We lose in November 2022 and they go through with their crazy plan to put Trump back into power. All right? George Floyd will be demonized as a villain. Every effort that people marched for last year will be made illegal. The fighting in Portland and Seattle and Michigan and Washington, D.C. will become the norm. This is a minority of Americans who understand as soon as they take power, they're going to eliminate power for the rest of us this time. They've learned change all the laws, make everything that was legal illegal, and then cut the ropes out from everybody else. We are talking about America sliding to dictatorship. I mean, we almost hit it under Trump. I mean, what more do you need? Trump is back on the ballot in November 2022, and all of us have to step up, mobilize our moms, our dads, kids, anyone eligible. We have to save this election.
And you said, wait a minute, they are on track to make him the Speaker of the House. If Democrats lose the House of Representatives, you're thinking Kevin McCarthy will be the president, will be in line of succession to the presidency? You think Kevin McCarthy will be the Speaker of the House? Look, everything that you have said.
Donald Trump will be Speaker of the House, and then he will be first in line to run in 2024 as president from the position of Speaker of the House. They will stop all government. They will engineer, they will unrun everything. This country will go back to massive sickness. We will have an economic crash the way we had it before. I mean, you know, how many bad things can happen? We resolved a lot of things in the last 6 months. All of it can be undermined with Donald Trump practically installing himself as a dictator. Oh, one last thing. They will never again certify an election for a Democrat that wins. So imagine that.
Well, thank you. That was really uplifting, and I appreciate that from Malcolm Nance today. You know what? You're helping us to see just how serious this is. That's why the Capitol was rushed. People feel we have to take ownership of our country as well. And America is supposed to be. And I want to thank you for your service, all the magnificent service that you've given us down through the years, the books, the military service, just your heart, your soul, making yourself available to all of us in the media so that you could really help to keep us informed. We love you, Malcolm Nance. I love you, Malcolm Nance, even though I didn't see you in Paris last week. I love going to talk about and want to hear your thoughts about what happened January 6th. What do you think about the hearings? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Thank you, Paul. Oh, boy. Oh. Oh, can you imagine Donald Trump, Speaker of the House? Be very clear. That could very well happen. It really could, everybody. This is not far-fetched. This is not far-fetched. It's not. It's not. This is something. That's me bringing up my Facebook feed, but you guys, we need to be vigilant and everybody get to vote, get registered to vote, and find out if you've been purged from the voter rolls. You need to do that too, and you need to do that for everybody who you know, and you need to make sure that that you're still on the voter rolls because that's a very real issue for a lot of people. And the way. Attorney Patillo. Oh, thank you so much, Attorney Robert Patillo.
Good morning.
How are you? You just had Lance, your brother in arms.
I was trying to get in contact with Malcolm. I'm trying to get him on my show also.
Oh, really? Okay. Thank you. I will.
Thank you so much.
Okay, of course I will. Of course. I didn't realize that. I wish you told me that before. You know, I believe in sharing.
I always have to remember you know everybody.
No, I don't. I mean, you know, I don't know what a celebrity show because, you know, that's just too tenuous. And it's, you know, not necessarily as interesting. I love bringing the issues to people and letting people who really know about these issues, and I love letting you all talk about them. We have Dwight McKee there as well. So
Morning.
I just think it's important. Hey, Dwight. Dwight, you're on with Attorney Robert Patillo.
Hey, PT, how you doing? How you doing, Robert?
Well, how are you?
Good.
Great.
Well, this will be great. I cannot wait to get your thoughts. You heard Malcolm say that the plan of the right wing is to recapture the House of Representatives and install Donald Trump as the Speaker of the House, which is entirely possible, everybody, because you do not have to be a sitting member of Congress in order to become Speaker of the House. You can name anyone. Anyone's name can be put in nomination, and they can be voted upon, and they can be installed as Speaker. Crazier things have happened. Crazier things could happen. Wow. Whew.
I find it to be the strangest thing on earth. The Republican Party refusing to move on. Because as more things happen, it's almost like a rock and roll band. First time you see them in concert, it's amazing. But, when they're doing the seniors tour, 40 years later, it's like, look, we got to get some new tunes here.
And you know what? You can't wear that same outfit you wore 40 years ago. Even if you kept your weight, you don't fill it out the same way. You look crazy. Oh, but look, every day there's something new, something crazy. Simone Biles, here we were waiting on this to be her Olympics, and she's like, I got mental health issues. I can't carry all of this, you guys. And it's just every day it's something new and crazy, Although, hey, I totally am respecting, her. I'm totally respecting her decision to do that, because bless her heart, they're under a lot of pressure, and I don't think we really understand how much pressure we put on these athletes. Dwight? Dwight?
A lot of pressure. And then, yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, now I can. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And let's remember that a lot of these are really young people, very teenagers or less. 15, 16, 17, 20 years old.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of weight to carry.
It is a lot of weight. And she had planned to be retired by now. Right? She was going to be retired last year. So she dragged this out another year. And she said, hey, you guys, I am exhausted. Wow. Bless her heart. Bless her heart. Whew. It's a lot. It's a lot. But but she's gotten a lot of fortunately she's gotten a lot of support, like Michael Phelps, who's had his own struggles. She's gotten a lot of support, and I'm glad to see that. And Naomi Osaka has gotten a lot of support. Whew, this is a lot.
Well, if you look at some of the Olympians from days past, after the Wheaties box, we just abandoned them. And a lot of them have had very rough lives thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody taking their mental health in their own hands and saying, I'm not going to be a statistic, I don't know how anybody can criticize that.
Well, think about Jesse Owens having to race animals. And remember, President Roosevelt did not greet him at the White House upon his return. Whew. It's not an easy road to glory, everybody. It's really not. So, but I'm glad you.
One advantage of having a black father as an athlete is that many of them prepare their kids mentally for the carry all of that weight because they understand the racism and the pressure.
Oh yeah.
And so Tiger Woods and Venus and that crowd, their fathers having gone through they went through, really invested a lot into the mental side of the game.
Absolutely.
And protected them.
Absolutely. And thus the strength. You're absolutely right. That's what you see that when people have been fathered, in particular. And that's no disrespect to moms, everybody, but your father has a role too. That's why I'm so supportive of them. Fathers have a role. It takes two to get you here. We're not amoeba who split. So think about that, everybody. You can tell that the Williams sisters had a strong mom and dad. And you saw how the press resented their strong father and their love and respect for him in particular. Oh, your mom is okay, absolutely. But your daddy, the fact that they had a father
15.
to whom they were answerable, Tiger, oh no. And I'd say that with Steph Curry too, all of them. So think about that, everybody.
Same thing with Reese.
Frank, they do. Because you couldn't get to Aretha unless you talked to her daddy.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, the second hour, Wednesday, July 28th, 2021. Got a lot to talk about. We, of course, had good news from Reverend Vicki Johnson, and we were talking about the mask mandates that are about to come into effect across the federal government platforms. What did the CDC say yesterday? Well, they said, the unvaccinated and the vaccinated, according to this NBC report, the head of the CDC, Dr. Rachel Walensky, said, they can both carry the same viral load. So everybody, whether you're vaccinated or not, must wear masks indoors. That is the recommendation. I hope that you are taking care of yourself and being physically distant, not socially distant, and practicing good oral and hand hygiene. It's so important. That's the way that we're going to have to fight this thing. Yet another layer of protection, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 763-769-278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text to that number. And so let's get to some of these headlines so that we can talk about the January 6th insurrection hearings. And have you heard about this whistleblower who got 45 months in prison yesterday? We're going to talk about him at the bottom of the hour. Absolutely. We need to talk about this Daniel Hale, who was part of the drone assassination program. And he said, we committed war crimes. I don't feel comfortable with that. And so he leaked the information. We're going to talk about that with Chip Gibbons of Defending Rights and Dissent at the bottom of the hour. But Dwight McKee and attorney Robert Patillo, host of his own show on WALK, will be on with us in just a hot second. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 85 degrees. It is muggy already, everybody, and we will have thunderstorms. Perhaps they will provide some relief. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 98 degrees. Thunderstorms. Hope you get some relief. The NASDAQ closed down 180 points yesterday. The S&P 500 closed down 20 points, and the Dow closed down 85 points. The Twins will be playing Detroit. The Cubs faced off against the Reds yesterday. The Reds were triumphant, 7-4. The White Sox faced off against the Royals. The White Sox overcame the Royals 5-3. Everybody, have you been watching the Olympics? Well, everybody's trying to figure out what is Simone Biles going to do from the all-around competition. She said she is trying to focus on her mental well-being. USA Gymnastics said in a statement yesterday that the 24-year-old is opting not to compete. The decision comes a day after she removed herself from the team final following one rotation because she felt she wasn't mentally ready. Remember, all of these athletes are one play away from permanent injury, from not being able to compete anymore, on and on and on and on. And remember, the Olympics are a year late. She had planned to retire last year at the mighty, mighty age of 23. In the meantime, the U.S. basketball team is having a tough time, but perhaps he'll move into the medal round this past weekend. That is the expectation. But a lot of the players are bristling against head coach Greg Popovich. Hope that they're able to work all of that out. In the meantime, what is happening in the medals race? Well, the USA thus far is number one, 30, and China's right behind them at 24. Japan is 20, and on to Australia is 16. We're going to see Russia 20. We will see. It's a very exciting Olympics indeed. They've got more than 20 million American viewers. They're getting more and more viewers every single day. Go Team USA. A hitman sent them. That is what the Capitol Police Officer, Harry Dunn, told a special House committee yesterday that a hitman sent the mob that invaded the halls of Congress on January 6th, a clear reference to former President Donald Trump. So let's talk about that with attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push, a brilliant radio show host in his own right, WAOK, the iconic talk radio station in Atlanta. He hosts his own show. Some of the best 3 hours that you will spend on a Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time on WAOK every Sunday. And Dwight McKee, brilliant sociologist, of course. He is, well, you know what? Let's start with you, Dwight, because you kind of predicted that we would have the kind of event that we saw during January 6th. What did you learn yesterday, if anything, from the testimonies of these U.S. Capitol police officers?
Uh, you learn how traumatized that people who really believe in the spirit of the country can be. We all were raised with the orientation that America was the land of opportunity, the land of greatness and beauty and fairness and equity. And people spend their whole lives responding to that rearing. Some of these guys who wanted to be not just police all their lives, they wanted to be police in the city of Washington, protecting the Capitol, beautiful, spacious skies. They really wanted to invest themselves into patriotism and protecting the rights and the Constitution and all of the pomp and circumstances that we've been raised to believe in. The planes and the fireworks and the flags they really believe in this country of equality and democracy. And then to be faced with their fellow citizens who are riotous and threatening their lives and trying to overturn the democracy was very traumatizing. Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Many of them could not actively, they didn't even recognize the country that they were in. So I think what you learn is that you really have America in the illusion of America. You have America in the mythology of America. And the mythology of America is that which we see on television, which we're raised to understand in the classrooms, that which we learned in the churches. That's the mythology of America. But the reality of America is the America that would turn on its neighbor, that is stolen the land from other people, that have enslaved another race for 400 years, and they want to stay in charge, and they're going to be in charge by any means necessary.
Well, what are your thoughts, Robert Patillo? What did you see yesterday?
Well, I saw that America gets to see what Black America has talked about and seen for the last several hundred years. This has always been the underbelly of America. This was the emptying out of America's trailer parks and militias and white supremacist halls and QAnon conspiracy theory parts of the internet. That all got emptied out for public display on January the 6th. And in the 6 months since then, Republicans have taken a concerted effort to make people forget what happened and indeed tell you that none of what you saw actually happened. And people have begun to actually believe that. So I think this is an important step for folks to remember exactly what happened and the attack that took place on our democracy. Then when they tell you there's nothing to worry about, when they tell you that they've got it under control, they do not. We have probably about a third of the U.S. population that is ready to overthrow this nation, and they're still completely and totally in lockstep with a failed politician and who are not taking no for an answer, who do not believe in our democratic norms. I find it interesting that whenever a Black person is shot, they say back the blue. But in this situation, you see conservatives calling these officers liars and exaggerators and everything else under the sun because it was never about backing the blue. It was about backing their political agenda. So we have to take these hearings seriously. We have to make sure that we put in legislative reforms to stop them from happening again. And we also need to have a law enforcement apparatus in this country that follows, that tracks, and that is able to handle these threats, because this is not simply a threat to the Capitol. It's a threat to the Republic itself. If you look back in history at times, things like this have happened before. You can look at the Bierhal Putsch in Germany, 1933. That led to the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. You can look at Mussolini storming the Capitol, which led to the rise of the Fascista Party. You can look at Napoleon storming the Capitol and locking the entire legislature in the Château de Saint-Cloud in 1799, which led to the fall of the French Republic. So when things like this happen, I think it's our duty to not simply say that they are an aberration to history, but to take them the type of seriousness that is necessary to ensure that we have the ability going forward to maintain our democratic systems and maintain our republic. And if we do not do so, then we can only expect this to happen again and to be worse next time.
Well, do you think that we're taking this seriously? I just had Malcolm Nance on. First you, Robert, and then you, Dwight McKee. Malcolm Nance, intelligence expert and veteran and best-selling author, said, look, the plan is this. And somewhere between the three of you and some others, you've not let us down. You've really almost prophesied all of this. He said, look, you better watch out for 2022, because if the Republicans recapture the House of Representatives, they are going to install Donald Trump as the Speaker of the House. And oh boy, and away we go. What do you say to that, Robert Patillo?
Oh, I think beyond that, I think the delusional holdings of these people, where you can tell them, look, you lost about 3 million votes the first time and 8 million votes the second time, and they'll say, no, I didn't. You can say, well, you lost Georgia and Florida because you let 500,000 people die of the virus, and they say, no, we didn't. They are completely detached from the objective reality that the rest of us live in. So it's very difficult to form political compromise, to work in a bipartisan way with people who do not share the same objective reality with you. If I say 2 plus 2 equals 4, and you say 2 plus 2 equals a conspiracy theory by the deep state and Hillary Clinton to kidnap children and take them to a pizza parlor, well, then we're not having the same conversation. So these individuals are completely detached from our American norms, and we have to ensure that they do not return to political power. If we do not start jailing these people for significant periods of time, and we do not start finding out who the officers were who just let them into the Capitol, that we do not find out which members of Congress were complicit in this, because that's really what Republicans are hiding right now. They're trying to hide their members who are complicit and worked with and helped give tours to and supported these rioters and insurrectionists. That's what they're trying to. That's why they're trying to foul up the system. This is the reason they did not want to have the bipartisan committee. This is the reason they tried to put Jim Jordan and Banks on the panel, because that is what they're afraid of. So we have to root that out to ensure that the American people understand that this was not simply as some of the Republicans have said, a peaceful rally, or Donald Trump has said it was just love. It was a love fest. No, this was an attack on democracy. And I ask people this. I ask my conservative friends this. If those people had succeeded, what would have happened? Well, they would have stopped the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in our nation's history. They more than likely would have killed the Vice President of the United States and also the Speaker of the House. They would have superseded the votes of the tens of millions of people who voted for Joe Biden in order to install Donald Trump as their president, and they effectively would have torn up the United States Constitution, and we would have had to have a convention of the states to rewrite it. It would have been the end of the republic. So this idea of downplaying it, I still think that the seriousness of that is not being articulated, and people need to understand that it's one of the most grave actions to happen in American history, and we have to ensure that people understand so it does not happen again.
Aren't the French like on their fifth republic?
They are indeed. And
because that can happen.
Last a couple months.
Yeah, well, but please explain that before I go to Dwight. Because they are celebrating their republics, because they said, no, we didn't just establish a republic under Napoleon. We have had several republics, and we continue to reestablish the republic. What does that mean, Robert?
All right, well, you gave me a chance to get nerdy, so I'm going to go ahead and do so.
I love it.
So if you look at the wave of anti-monarchical revolutions that took place in the 17th century, everything from the American Revolution, and all this was really the residue of the 7 Years' War between Britain and France, which is in many ways the First World War. You know, you had fighting in India, you had fighting in Africa, you had fighting in North America. We called it the French and Indian War, but it led to the breakdown of many monarchical systems. So you saw the British Empire lose America. The French declared their independence. Haiti declared their independence, so on and so forth, around the world. And so this, when we had Robespierre, Marie Antoinette let them eat cake. And so they founded the first French Republic, I think it was in 1792. Under that form of government, they reformed the calendar. They changed the religious institutions. It was the Age of Enlightenment, which kind of also turned into a lot of people's heads getting cut off. 1799, you have Le Coup d'État de 18 Brumaire, Château de Saint-Cloud, where Napoleon, as I said, locked the entire legislature into a building. He took over the country, dissolved the parliament, and this was pretty much the titular end of the First French Republic. It officially ended, I think, in 1804 when Napoleon appointed himself emperor. After Napoleon's death, you didn't have the next French Republic until around 1848. This was another string of revolutions that had taken place in Europe where they sought to reestablish many of the concepts of the Enlightenment. That was a very short-lived republic. I think it was maybe 4 years. Then you had the Third French Republic after the fall of Napoleon III. That was right around the time of the American Civil War. So it was after the Franco-Prussian War. So that was around 1870 up until World War II. Then you had Hitler invade and establish the French government, Vichy French government there. After the end of World War II, then that's when you had the Fourth French Republic, where they tried the Republican form of government again. That lasted until the mid-50s when we had another revolution, and that's the republic that we're on now, the Fifth French Republic. So republics are not something eternal. They're something that has to be fought for. They have to be established. Democracy, by its very nature, is an experiment. It's not natural to the human condition. The human condition has always had kings. It's always had ruling classes. It has always had elites. The concept of the people being able to govern themselves in a republican form of government is very tenuous, and it can rise and fall again. And the only thing that has maintained America as the longest-running republic is the fact that we have had these democratic norms in place that prevent us from having bloody revolutions, other than a couple times. You know, you have the Civil War, where our republic nearly fell. You have the social strife of the 1960s, where we were far closer to the republic falling than I think anybody realizes. And we have this current attack on the Capitol, where we very well could have seen the fall of the republic again. So I think if folks understand the tenuous nature of democracy, then they'll better understand why this is so important to get right.
That's why it's important to look at the French and to understand their understanding of the Republic, because indeed, I think they have a greater understanding of even our history than we do, Dwight McKee.
And don't forget that Napoleon arrested the Pope and dissolved the Vatican on the birthday age. Mm-hmm. Don't forget that part of it.
It's a big piece.
Dissolved the Catholic Church in France and in Rome. It's a very tenuous, and we have to understand that democracy is not an end unto itself. It's part of a process. It's a means to an end. Mm. And we just happen to choose the majority rule, but that was a choice. In most countries and empires around the world, they've had either oligarchies where few people rule, or they had dictatorships where one man ruled, or they had monarchies where a king and a family ruled. And so democracy is kind of a new concept. We really can't take it for granted and have to fight every day to maintain it.
Where are we now, in your estimation, Dwight?
Teetering. I think we're teetering. I think that racism in this country is so extreme, and the need for people to control and to hold power is so extreme that they're willing to do almost anything to maintain it. Historically, there have been pockets of people who are willing to overthrow the democracy in America. The vice president was willing to do it, and to take over Texas and to overthrow the government. Who was it? Van Buren? Who was it? Van Buren? Robert that wanted to do that? Not Van Buren. The one that killed Hamilton.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, Burr.
Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr wanted to run a revolution and overthrow the government. But there's always been pockets of people who are involved in direct politics who've been willing to work out a compromise. And so we probably would have had another civil war in 1877 had not they compromised, even though in the compromise they sold blacks out and took the troops out the South. At least they were able to deal with enough compromise to save the republic, to save democracy. Now what you have that's different is you have the insiders, the people in government itself, willing to buy into their need to cooperate with those who want to overthrow the government so that they themselves can maintain power. That's what's new in all of this.
And it's very real, everybody. Robert, I've got 1 minute. It belongs to you.
Well, I think it's crucial that we do not allow them to steal this narrative, that we do not allow them to take this moment and twist it for their own purposes. When they control conservative media, when they control conservative newspapers and internet outlets, they will convince you that everything you saw never happened. And if we allow that to happen, then these people, these hundreds of thousands who stormed the Capitol, who are still loyal to their militia leader Donald Trump, they will be back. And they will be back in a big way. It's very important for us to understand that these people are violent, they are armed, they are extreme, and they think they're right. One of the officers yesterday said that. I thought that was the most striking moment.
1 minute.
Because these folks don't think that they're enemy. They don't think they're on the wrong side of history. They think they are fighting to defend the republic, not destroy the republic. And as we get closer to that racial demographic shift, where white people become a minority group among other minority groups in the next 2 decades or so, we're going to see a even more overheated rhetoric and overheated actions in this country. And it's going to be our jobs to hold these streams of democracy together and hold together what we want America to be.
Let's talk about it, everybody. We're going to talk about Daniel Hale. Daniel Hale, a former U.S. intelligence analyst who leaked information. He felt that these were war crimes. War crimes. I mean, you have to fight
15.
to make America be what it's supposed to be. Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo, Attorney Robert Patillo, WAOK, every Sunday, 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Sending you all my love. You all are great, helping us to see really where we are in this republic. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Whew. You guys, this is a lot. I just want you to know, this is a lot. I mean, I just when Malcolm Nance said that, if we lose the House, we can, they can name this man to be the Speaker of the House, which is entirely possible and plausible. Don't think it couldn't happen, everybody. And when the Democrats know this, Robert and Dwight, and they don't run with this information, hello, I don't understand it. I don't get it.
Well, Democrats don't know how to do anything but run scared for some reason. I'm going to send you an interview with James Carville that's hilarious, because it shows kind of that 1992 logic that many Democrats still have, which is we can't scare the white people. We can't do anything too progressive. We can't get too far outside the box. So we lose those upper Midwest Rust Belt, Tammy Wynette, Stand By Your Man, John Cooper Mellencamp voters. Then there's nothing we can do to win going forward. And that just isn't the nature of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is young, it's diverse, it's progressive, it's the party of the future. But these voices from the past keep making them run scared, and that's what keeps making them lose.
Okay, but they to Bernie Sanders in 2016, so I don't know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
I mean, so it's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This, they went to Bernie. It's not going to deliver for them. Dwight, you said something that was so profound. Why is Bernie Sanders the most popular politician in the United States today? Because he will fight for you. That's what he looks like. We have Chip Gibbons.
Yes.
You all, I have Chip Gibbons. Thank you so much, Chip. I'm so glad to hear you. I called him very late. Thank you for still being my friend. I have Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo who are holding, but we're going to talk about Daniel Hale. Uh, uh, Robert, you should talk about this on your show. Not that I'm programming for you, producing for you, but this is such a big case, such a big case, and I felt it was such a wonderful segue. I mean, and that was happening. His case was being heard yesterday and he was sentenced yesterday while we were looking at what was happening on the Hill. And this man is fighting war crimes that he feels that our country committed. You all have to understand when we commit war crimes, when people don't respect the authority of America's military, it hurts our military on the ground. They pay a price for that. Stay right here. Chip, I'm so glad to have you with us. Stay right here. Dwight and Robert, you going to stay with us? You're more than welcome to.
I stay for a little while.
Okay. Well, please listen in because Chip was there and he is there.
One minute.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Trying to edit this. Why does anyone call me in the middle of my show? You all what? Ah. Good morning, Jewel. Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, I'm Santita Jackson, joining you from WCPT 820 Chicago, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, my home to the north. My brothers and sisters up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, sending you much love today. We've been talking about the January 6th insurrection hearings. Yesterday, we found out a lot. We saw the trauma experienced by our U.S. Capitol Police and the things that were said to them, the things that were done to them, and the pain that they're still in. But there was another occurrence that was happening at the same time of great import. And Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee said they would stay with us for a while because they wanted to hear what Chip Gibbons, the policy director for Defending Rights and Dissent, what he has to say about the Daniel Hale case. This is a case that hasn't gotten as much sunlight as it really does need. This man, according to a news report from the Washington Post, was at an anti-war conference. Now, he is a veteran. And when a man recounted that two of his family members had been killed in a U.S. drone strike, a man from Yemen, it made him rethink what they were doing. And we have seen in the past a lot of those intelligence analysts and our Army veterans who've been involved in the drone assassination program, because the drone assassination program, of course, has to be run by people. Many of them have left. Many of them have left. Daniel Hill took it another step. He went a step further. He leaked information, and boy, he's paying the price for it. So, Chip Gibbons, explain the Daniel Hale case to us. What happened? What are we looking at? And what does this say about people who try to expose some of the things that our government does that are just wrong, that are incorrect? Chip Gibbons.
Well, sure. So Daniel Hale was a U.S. Air Force veteran. He, at the time of his disclosures to the press, was working as a contractor at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. While Hale was in the Air Force, he was assigned as an intelligence analyst to Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan, which we recently vacated, but at the time was part of the so-called kill chain. That is the process of carrying out these assassinations via drone strikes. He was able to, I don't want to say see firsthand because it's all on a computer screen, but see in real time as people were murdered by our government. And he had joined the military out of sort of desperation. He was facing homelessness at the time and thought the military was a way to get out of it. So he was always very skeptical of our foreign policy. And as he is watching this happen, he's extremely, extremely disturbed. When he comes back to the U.S., he becomes involved in anti-war activism with Veterans for Peace, with the group that used to be known as Iraq Veterans Against the War, but is now called About Face. He speaks at a Code Pink summit, and he appears at events with the journalist Jeremy Scahill. He then goes on to get a contracting job at the NGA, like I mentioned before. And while he's watching President Obama give his first major address about drone strikes, he's very disturbed by the depiction of them because, of course, the president is saying that every precaution is taken to guard civilian life, that they're not that bad, they're surgical, they're targeted killings, the usual things. And he's just very disturbed by this disconnect between what our government is saying and what he witnessed happened in Afghanistan. So he begins to download documents and give them to a journalist. And in 2014, he's actually participating in a documentary about a number of drone whistleblowers called National Bird. And while he's filming this, his home is raided and searched by the FBI in connection to a violation of the Espionage Act. And then a year later, The Intercept actually publishes this story, and it reveals a number of things, including that during one 5-month period in Afghanistan, 90% of people killed by U.S. airstrikes are not the intended target. And then moving forward 5 years, it's a long story. He's indicted in 2019 under the Espionage Act. He pleads guilty earlier this year. I don't think people really realize this, but if you're a whistleblower indicted under the Espionage Act, you basically have no chance of a defense. You're barred by the prosecution and by the judge from talking about your motives. Daniel Ellsberg was the first whistleblower who gave information showing the government was lying about the Vietnam War to be indicted under the Espionage Act. And when his attorney asked him on the stand, why did you leak the Pentagon Papers? The judge says, no, you can't answer that question. And, in the run-up to the trial that was going to happen of Hale, the prosecution submitted a number of motions that the judge granted. One was to bar Hale from talking about his quote-unquote good intentions. That's the phrase the prosecution used in the motion. Hale would not have been allowed to challenge the classification of the documents or bring up the fact that it was a selective prosecution, right? The largest leaker of U.S. government secrets in this country is the U.S. government. Hale is not being prosecuted because he leaked information about the drone program. He's being prosecuted because he undermined official claims about civilian casualties. People leak classified information all the time in Washington. The only people who are prosecuted for it are people who are doing so to raise the public awareness about government lies. And also, he would not have been allowed to assert another person could have given the journalist these documents unless he could identify a person who had access to them and a relationship to that journalist. So there was no chance of a defense. And he actually pled guilty without a plea deal, which is very, very rare. And at the plea hearing, a lot of people were very shocked by this. The government refused. He only pled guilty to one of the 5 counts brought against him. The government refused to dismiss the remaining charges, reserving the right to go to trial if they didn't like the sentence the judge imposed. And, I talked to one of his lawyers, and she told me that in 20 or 30 years of being an attorney, I've never seen this happen. This is completely, very rare. And, the peculiarities of this case were on full evidence during yesterday's sentencing hearing. I attended, and everybody in the courthouse, it was packed with supporters, were kicked out for an hour and a half so they could have a classified hearing about the case, right? This is supposed to be a public court. A man is going to jail, and everyone has to vacate the courtroom so the prosecution can, present secret facts to the judge that none of us are allowed to hear. He was sentenced to 45 months in prison. That is a very long time. That is too long for someone who spoke out, is conscious, and exposed these sorts of horrendous crimes. But it's a third of what the government was asking for. The government wanted him in prison for 9 years. So it's a very sort of mixed day yesterday emotionally, because while it is very upsetting that someone who's so extremely principled, and Hale both wrote a handwritten letter to the judge you can read online, and gave a really moving 19-minute speech to the court. This was in the public section, during which he said, "I am here today because I stole something that was never mine to take, precious human life. For that I was compensated and given a medal. I couldn't keep living in a world in which people pretend that things weren't happening that were. Please, Your Honor, forgive me for taking pieces of paper instead of human lives." Right? He was accused of stealing these government papers. There's a reference to that. But at the same time, the government did not get away with getting this 9-year sentence, which they wanted explicitly because they wanted a deterrent for future whistleblowers to come forward. And it's a really terrible situation for people in the national security realm who come forward with information about war crimes, about surveillance, about torture, because since about 2010, 2011, it's become the normal practice to indict these people under the Espionage Act. I mean, when Daniel Ellsberg was indicted back in the 70s, the 50th anniversary of the Pentagon Papers was last month. Right? It was unheard of. There's one case in the Reagan administration of someone being indicted under the Espionage Act for giving information to the press. It's considered so bizarre that Bill Clinton pardons the person at the urging of Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who's at that time a chairman of a commission studying government secrecy, and he becomes very concerned that this person was prosecuted under the Espionage Act because, as I pointed out earlier, Moynihan argues the offense isn't that unusual, giving information to the press, but prosecuting this person is extremely rare. It's a selective prosecution. But since the Obama administration and the Trump administration, these types of prosecutions have become the norm, and we've seen a number of them. We saw, NSA whistleblower Thomas Drake was prosecuted under this law, although that case against him fell apart. John Kiriakou, the CIA agent who confirmed the U.S. was waterboarding in a form of torture, was initially prosecuted under the Espionage Act but pled guilty under another law. Chelsea Manning, who exposed all kinds of war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as, really sort of backroom deals and maneuvers by the State Department, prosecuted under the Espionage Act. Terry Albury, the only black FBI agent at the Minneapolis field office, who was so concerned by the FBI's harassment of Muslim Americans who went to the Intercept with documents about how the FBI operates, was also prosecuted under the Espionage Act. I mean, you just see this time and time again these days. And, the Trump administration took it a step forward, and they indicted, Julian Assange, who is the first person to be indicted not for giving information to the media under the Espionage Act, but for publishing it, which is a really escalation of this sort of war on whistleblowers. That's always been sort of a backdoor war on journalism itself. And it's worth pointing out that the prosecutor in this case and the judge in this case are the same prosecutor and judge in the Assange case. So in some ways, this was a dress rehearsal for what the U.S. government is planning to do if they ever get Julian Assange in this country, which hopefully they will not.
We're talking with Chip Gibbons, Policy Director excuse me, for defending rights and defending rights and dissent, excuse me. About the Daniel Hale case, this is a veteran who had, well, I mean, he had a crisis of conscience. He said, we're actually violating the law. These are war crimes, and I've got to report it. What kind of signal is being sent out when he's not just persecuted, he's prosecuted, he's going to be put in jail?
Well, the signal is very clear. I mean, the prosecution told the judge they needed a 9-year sentence in order to deter other people from giving information to the media. And the judge, when sentencing him to 45 months in prison, explicitly stated, which, once again, that's a very long sentence, but it's a third of what the U.S. government wanted. The judge was very clear in his statement that this is about deterring others from doing the same thing. So it's not just a signal. They are loud and clear that they want to deter other people with similar information from coming forward and giving it to the media. It's very much about deterring and silencing whistleblowers. It's very much about deterring and silencing the sources of journalists. And if journalists don't have sources that give them information about how 90% of the people in Afghanistan being killed by U.S. airstrikes aren't the intended target, they can't report on those types of facts and give that type of information to the U.S. public. And it's also worth noting that one of the documents he gave to the Intercept as well, it wasn't classified, so he wasn't prosecuted for it, but it really is worth mentioning, was the guidelines for the secret terrorist watch list. And the fact that this document was published was used by the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, the largest Muslim civil rights group in this country, to represent U.S. citizens who were placed on the no-fly list in challenging the constitutionality of that placement. And because Daniel Hale had given this document to the public, they were able to go to court and successfully vindicate their constitutional rights. So, I mean, the results of this disclosure, I mean, the prosecution keeps saying, oh, it could have harmed national security. They literally said in court yesterday that Daniel Hale had helped ISIS, right? Daniel Hale didn't help ISIS. He didn't harm national security. But this prosecution has harmed our democracy. I mean, this is a political prosecution, as all these prosecutions are. The Espionage Act, it's been on the books for over 100 years, and its use historically has just been one nightmarish case after another. It was used during the Wilson administration to prosecute people who criticized World War I. The first 2,000 cases brought under the Espionage Act were not of spies, not of saboteurs, not even of whistleblowers who gave information to the media, but of war critics. Of course, the Supreme Court has since interpreted the First Amendment in a way that, we would understand, and that would no longer be possible. But then, during the McCarthy era, Joseph McCarthy keeps saying there's communist spies in the State Department, there's traitors in the State Department. And as part of this sort of floundering conspiracy theory, he latches on to this case involving this small left-wing academic journal that published information about U.S.-China policy that came from, classified documents or just government documents that people in the State Department allegedly concerned about the U.S.-China policy had given them. And they actually amend the law in 1950 to make it even worse. And the provision Hale pled guilty to is actually from the McCarthy-era amendments. Then during Vietnam, another U.S. war based on lie, they use this to prosecute Daniel Ellsberg and Anthony Russo, who come forward with the Pentagon Papers, which show how the U.S. had lied throughout the war, that they had plans to seek a military authorization before the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, that the U.S. was engaged in these aggressive military actions against North Vietnam in the run-up to the Gulf of Tonkin. And we now know the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where the U.S. government claims a ship was hit in international waters by targeted by the North Vietnamese, completely a lie, and it was used as a pretext to launch a war that killed 58,000 Americans and 3 million Vietnamese, and it was entirely premised on a lie. And then with the War on Terror, we saw tons of Espionage Act prosecutions as people started to expose torture. People started to expose mass surveillance by the NSA. People started to expose FBI harassment of communities. People started to expose war crimes, right? Like, Chelsea Manning gave information, and WikiLeaks published that horrifying video of that U.S. gunship killing two Reuters journalists and a bunch of other people in Iraq. They call it, collateral murder, and it's worth pointing out that one of the soldiers in the video who can be seen trying to rescue the children who was killed by the gunship, he had spoken out publicly against the war a number of times. I actually watched that video in a room with him once. He had been a war critic, and he was very thankful that this video, this horrible incident, had been released to sort of prove that what he was saying about the war had been true. But, we don't really want to listen to those types of voices in our society. They always talk about, support the troops. If you're giving this information, you're harming our troops. But there are plenty of people who have come forward who are veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars to try to talk about, the reality of what a protracted military occupation is, what that does to the civilian populations that we occupy. And, for some reason, it's never support those troops. And many of them have, done things like the Winter Soldier hearings where they talked about the war crimes they witnessed. A number of them have championed people like Chelsea Manning and Daniel Hale when they've released this information. But there's just a complete and total sort of media refusal by the media to even acknowledge this is happening.
We're talking with Chip Gibbons, defending rights and dissent. As we were looking at what was happening yesterday on Capitol Hill, what had happened actually January 6th, as we were watching these brave police officers who I know they never could have dreamt that they would have been in that position. Never, ever, ever, ever. It seems that we're defending democracy on many fronts, Chip. I'm wondering if we really, really understand what's at stake here when a young man like Daniel Hale, who really got caught in the poverty draft, right? He was homeless. But doesn't mean that he wasn't patriotic. It's just, if he could have, he would have rather have done something else. But, we don't have a peace dividend. So there he went. And then he saw some things that were morally questionable to him. And he said, well, actually, they're illegal. And now he's going to prison. What does that say?
I mean, it's pretty dark what it says. I mean, and I don't think you can separate the sort of policy of prosecuting whistleblowers from the policies they expose, right? The fact that we have a foreign policy that is in which war crimes are routine, in which wars are launched on lies, right? The Iraq War was launched on lies about weapons of mass destruction. The Vietnam War was launched on lies about the Gulf of Tonkin. You can't separate that from the fact that these people are prosecuted, right? A society that launches wars based on lies then turns around and prosecutes people who tell the truth about those wars. I mean, it's very profound, it's very deep, and it's a real sickness within our society.
So where do we go from here? I mean, is he going to appeal his case, or is he just he's going to go to prison? What happens?
He's going to go to prison. There's going to be a campaign from his supporters to try to get Joseph Biden to pardon him. We will see where that goes. Obama commuted Chelsea Manning's sentence after she had served 7 years in prison out of a 35-year sentence. She did more time in prison than anyone had ever done for giving information to the media. She was tortured during her pretrial detention. The UN Special Rapporteur concluded decisively that Chelsea Manning was subjected to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment that may have constituted torture. He was not able to make a determination about torture because the U.S. government hindered his investigation. But based on the facts he definitively ruled it was cruel, degrading, and inhuman treatment that may constitute torture. And, I believe very strongly she was tortured. But he commuted her sentence. Biden could do something similar. I don't know if he will or would not, but it's worth putting pressure on it, and it's really worth putting pressure on members of Congress, because ultimately the ball is in their court here, where they could actually amend the Espionage Act so that if someone is indicted under the Espionage Act, the government has to prove they intended to harm the country or help a foreign power, which is what espionage is, right? And so they can no longer just use the Espionage Act and say, oh, you had classified information. Oh, and you gave it to a reporter. You're guilty under the Espionage Act. There's no sense, because that is the crime here. And it's worth pointing out that actually one of the things Daniel Hale was not allowed to do had he gone to trial would have been to challenge the classification of the documents, because you're not allowed to classify information to cover up misdeeds because it'd be embarrassing. That's misclassification. But the prosecution said, A, classification is the sole domain of the executive branch, the president. A court can't overrule a classification decision, and the judge agreed. And B, even if the information was improperly classified, he'd still be guilty, because the Espionage Act doesn't require the information to be properly classified, just classified. So Congress could step and amend the Espionage Act in a number of ways that would make these prosecutions, if not impossible, extremely more difficult, and make it so that most people wouldn't just plead out under this, right? Hale pled guilty without a plea bargain, because what's the point of going to trial when you have no defense, right? Literally every avenue of defense was stripped from him before he ever went to trial. So I would say the ball is really in Joe Biden's court in terms of pardoning or commuting Daniel Hale's sentence, and the ball is very much in Congress's court, where it's been for 2 decades now, in terms of amending the Espionage Act and fixing this really sordid stain on our nation.
And it's our court, because Daniel Hale could be your husband, your partner, your brother. He could be you. He could be to really redefine what a hero is. Heroes are people who put themselves at risk. They risk it all to save the rest of us. And that is what he has done. Because none of us are safe until all of us are safe. We've got a lot of great people in our armed forces, but if they are not doing the right thing, or if they feel compelled to do the wrong thing, even when they know that it's wrong, they suffer moral injury, everybody. This is not good for anybody. It's not. It's not. He did a heroic thing. So not only does the president have power, you have power. You can call your representative and say that you want this man, Daniel Hale, to be exonerated. Please consider it. I love everybody. Thank you, Chip Gibbons. Thank you for the work that you do. Spoke with Medea Benjamin last night of Code Pink. Love her, love you, Dwight, and Robert Patillo, and Reverend Vicki Johnson, and Dr. She is ministerial in her zeal, Dr. Deborah Furholden. Love you all. Love all my morning stars and all my friends beyond Facebook and everything else. I love you all. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you, Paul, for a great show. God bless you, everybody. Chip, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for having me on. It's really glad you let me talk about that.
No.
It has not gotten the attention it should have gotten in the media, and part of the reason for that, is just the media isn't always good at determining what's important. But Hale was very hesitant to bring any sort of attention to himself, because he thought the story should be the drone victims who were killed by the U.S. And even as he was being persecuted by the U.S. government, he didn't want to call attention to himself, because he thought it would take away from the real story, which is our crimes overseas. So he's just all around a stand-up guy who is suffering because of it.
Well, we have to let people need to know what's going on. We need to know about the case. So if you can, if he's willing to talk, please let me know, because I'd love to have him on. I'd love to try and get him to people, including the Reverend Show, and so that he can talk about it.
He's in prison right now, so they
took him right to prison.
So he was. This is really disturbing. He was out on his own recognition, awaiting sentencing, and he went in for a routine probation officer or parole hearing, whatever it is that this point, and they took him into custody, arguing they were concerned about his mental health. His court-appointed therapist turned him in, and they put him in solitary confinement, which, if you have a mental health crisis, solitary confinement does not actually help. And actually, the jail they detained him in had no counseling services. So his mental health counseling was actually disrupted by this. So they used supposed concerns about his mental health to take him out of counseling and put him in solitary confinement. So yeah, he's been in jail for a couple of months now, and he's going straight to prison. Yeah, he's not out.
Well, that's what happened with my brother when he was in prison. You know, he's supposed to be on specific meds for bipolar disorder, and he was teaching his fellow inmates about a particular law rule that went into effect under the Obama administration, that because of the way that it was written, it would allow you to appeal. But if you were not very, very specific and completely correct, you would have been branded a liar and it would have added more time to your prison term. He caught that because he's also a trained lawyer. And he would catch things like that. He really kind of held class with his fellow inmates. And one night, he was dragged out of his cell and put in solitary confinement. We didn't find out about it for a couple of days. And but his fellow inmates were desperate for us to find out. And they said, we know he's not getting his medicine. We know he's not getting the care that he needs. And I thank God for his fellow inmates because they, possibly saved his life. And I hope that we need to let people know about the Daniel Hale case so that he can get that kind of protection too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I actually, I didn't realize this until I was at court yesterday, but someone I knew a long time ago, 5 years ago, was actually living with Daniel Hale at the time of his arrest, and he just went in for this hearing and then disappeared and they didn't know what had happened to him for 2 days. They didn't know what had happened to him. It turned out he was in jail. It was really awful what they did to him, and I think it was really very stressful for him because when people know they're going to prison, they're going to be sentenced, they'll oftentimes make plans of sort of the things they want to do before they go, before they're incarcerated. And he had a whole bunch of plans. He wanted to have dinner with friends. He wanted to watch the Mortal Kombat movie, which would not be my choice of movie, but was his. He really wanted to say goodbye to his cat, and they just snatched him, and he was, reportedly very, very devastated by all of this, especially, not being able to say goodbye to the cat. So,
well, it's designed to break your spirit, Oh, of course, it's designed to break your spirit. I mean, so that anyone who comes behind you who thinks about doing this wouldn't dare. And we're the ones who have to stop this. We're the ones. But the only way that we can is if people know about the case, right? People need to know about the case. If you don't know about it, there's nothing you can do about it. That's why, I just want to.
No, and I appreciate they're definitely trying to break his spirit, which is why it was very uplifting yesterday that the courtroom was filled with supporters. It was a filled courtroom. And when he was taken away by U.S. Marshals, everyone in the viewing area who were his supporters, all stood up and waved goodbye to him and shouted out, "Thank you for following your conscience." And one of his housemates shouted out, "We'll see you soon, Dan." And it was really heartening to watch that with sort of all of the other, terrible things that had happened over the last 2 hours or 5 years, however long you want to track this, to see that as he was taken away, he did so in a room full of people who cared about him and appreciated what he had given us.
May I make this recommendation to you?
Sure.
Really, because of my own personal experience with this and just the experience that we had before my brother went to prison, Congressman Jackson. Someone should write him every day or at least several times a week. That's going to mean so much to him. It's going to mean so much. Just even if it's a postcard thinking about you, because he will then not feel isolated. He will know that life is going on outside of the walls of the prison and he will be included in it. That's important. And we need to establish visitation. Somebody needs to show up at that prison once a week or every other week, really. That's my brother didn't have a week without, he didn't have a day without a letter from my mom. And he didn't have a week or 10 days without a visit from my father, whether he was in North Carolina or Alabama.
Yeah, and there's a campaign right now to get people to write letters from him. If you go to standwithdanielhill.org, there's all the information on how to write to him. And he responds to every letter. Right now, he's in the Alexandria city or county detention, so he cannot receive books, which has been very upsetting to him. I know other people who have been detained there have been upset by that. But when he's in prison as opposed to just jail, he'll be able to receive books, and that information will be up. So yeah, I mean, people are writing him. I would encourage you to write him a letter. I mean, it means a lot.
Send me his information.
To receive.
I will do that.
I will. I mean, it's sort of a weird position right now because he's still in the jail, but we're not sure where he's going to be in prison. But when he's in a more permanent location, I will definitely send you the information about how to write to him.
But publicize it every day, because if he gets shrouded in darkness, or if he's hidden in any way, that's not safe for him. But if he is someone who people are talking about, who people are looking for, because quite frankly, people were looking for my brother. They were looking for him, but because he conducted himself in a particular way, he got from he didn't lose any. Because before he got there, they had to clean the place up, which of course makes other prisoners resentful. They're like, okay, somebody big must be coming in, blah 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 blah. But Jesse, the first thing he did was, number one, he showed up a day early, and then he wanted to get bathroom duty. He said, I'd like to clean the toilets. And they were like, whoa, no, we're not going to let you do that. He said, I don't have a problem with it. I'm here. And, as prisoners found out that he was very approachable, and, and very embracing, they embraced him in turn. Now, but he has the personality for it. I don't know about Mr. Hale, because everybody's struggling with something. But I think that if the people in the prison know that he is cared for and that we're looking for him, that's going to make a big difference. I promise you, it really, really will. It does. So I'd like to work with you on that.
That's excellent. And thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Believe me, I've come to you with that from my own experience. My mother wrote in fact, it's a book, Loving You, Thinking of You, Don't Forget to Pray. Everybody go on and get it. And she wrote a letter a day to him every day that he was in prison. And it became like the running joke at the prison. They were like, okay, because they have mail call every day. Every day they were like, okay, here, yeah, I know you got a letter. And he said what was heartbreaking to him was that there were so many who were there who never got a visit, who never got a letter. And here, his mother was writing him every day, and his father was there every week to 10 days. I mean, and people just, it doesn't leave a lot of space for mischief when they know that people are going to come and see you. So that means a lot. And it means a lot to people inside. It really, really does. So,
thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Oh, yeah. I just, from my own experience, want to give you that. That means a lot, because also at some point movements can become academic. And this is not academic. This is academic, also, it's personal. Yeah. I mean, personally, he is locked away. Personally. And that's very, very hard. Very, very hard. But as Marion Barry advised my brother to do, he said, just remember to serve one day at a time. Just take it one day at a time. And, and there's a lot that he can do, and there's a lot that we can encourage him to do. He can write. He can even talk to people, and they can transcribe what he's saying. All of that's going to be very, very important because he will have a bigger testimony when he gets out. So
yeah, no, that's very true.
Please let me know how I can be helpful. Please do.
I'll let you know when they know where he's going to be, sort of more long term. I don't know how helpful it is to keep giving out the Alexandria Detention Center address right now because I don't know how long he's going to be there, and I doubt they're going to forward his mail for him. I know they won't actually. So, but when he's in a more permanent location, I think it'll be really good to have people write to him.
Well, let's get some things to him now, because it will send a signal to to the jail, to the prison system, that people are looking out for him.
I will email you the information on how
Okay.
to write to him.
Perfect. Even if
Right now.
even if I just say standing with you, that's it. That's important.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think he'll appreciate it. Yeah.
And
All right.
people need to know, the people who are looking over him, they need to know people are out here looking for him. Remember, Bobby Rush surrendered from the FBI was looking for him. He was the most wanted man in America. He surrendered at my parents' apartment. I was like 5. My brother 4, 3. I mean 4 and 5. Also 6, 5, and 4. That's what we were. Okay. So I've seen this before. I'm not saying that I love it. I'm just saying I've seen it before. I've seen it before.
No, I understand. Yeah.
So that I want to give to you. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for all that you do.
Oh, well, thank you for all that you do. I mean, really, thank you. Thank you. I just have so much admiration and respect for what you do. Thank you. And like I said, any way that I can be helpful, you got it.
Okay, I'll give you the information, and I'll keep you updated on what happens with this.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Oh, you too. You too.
Right,
You
have a
too.
good one.
Thank you. God bless. I love everybody. God bless you. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I'm sending you all of my love, Richard, Robert, Jewel. Thank you so much for always posting, my dear sister. Thank you. Thank you. Fatu in the Gambia. Let me see, David up in the north, our brother to the north up in Canada, sending you much love, sending all of you much love, all of you. All of you, all of you, all of you. Thank you so much for all of your support. And everybody, like and share, like and share. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Bye-bye.